Hello everyone, it's Michael Chambers here. I'm here with a video on what makes some groups in the Catholic Church cults. Why is it that some parts of the Catholic Church go cultish and others are pretty safe from it? Um, so first of all, I thought we'll just get out of the way the parts of the Catholic Church that I'd say generally are not likely to end up as cults, and that's basically the parish structure. I don't know of many parishes that I would say have gone full on cult. No, I remember one parish in London that I went to occasionally, um, where the neo-catechumenate met, and the priest there, Father Alan Fudge, was in that group, and that's a cultish group for sure. But even that group, even that parish itself, wasn't all neo-catechumenate. You could go to that church and not be sucked into it, just have a normal parish experience. I don't know to what extent he might have directed parishioners he got to know into that. But generally, that's an exception, and most parishes don't have that kind of person running them. There are some Opus Dei parishes, and I'm sure that Opus Dei priests will look out for opportunities to direct people that they come across in their parishes into Opus Dei activities. But generally, parishes are resistant to that, and there are proper protections in place. Okay, so if something goes wrong in a parish environment, there's some pressure, some moral pressure, emotional um, abuse of any type, then you can complain to the parish priest or straight to the diocese. Safeguarding teams are on it. If the safeguarding teams don't do it correctly, then it can be escalated to oversight bodies. In England, the Catholic Safeguarding Standards Association. So there's a fully professional chain of safeguarding in place, and to that, and the fact is, the Catholic dioceses and parishes advertise that. They're not ashamed of that. They know that that system already works. Okay. And in the case of many religious organizations, there's a similar level of scrutiny. So religious organizations, so convents and monasteries and particular orders, which are not parish based, but often work in parishes, but will be based away from the parish structure. In England, their safeguarding um, procedures are overseen by the Religious Life Services. Um, can't remember the last letter, RLSS. Anyway, it's audited to a similar level as parishes, um, and so for most religious orders have some level of safeguarding, which at least should catch issues, even if it doesn't prevent them. And there are some organizations like the Jesuits who sit outside those systems, but have their own system, which is equally respected, it's equally strong, and they work closely with other parts of the Catholic Church. So there's less and less possibility of mainstream Catholic organizations getting away with systematic long-term abuse like Opus Dei does. So of course, Opus Dei does not sign up to any oversight by the Catholic Church, by any safeguarding authority in the Catholic Church. It deals with its own safeguarding procedures, completely unsatisfactory. Then they're way below any kind of level of safeguarding practiced elsewhere. But they get away with that because they are one of many institutions of pontifical right. What does that mean? That they were set up by a pope, and so there is no requirement for them to be, at this point anyway, to submit to any diocesan oversight, okay, in terms of safeguarding. Now, the bishops could get heavy with them. They've got the powers in canon law, even under the statutes of Opus Dei, that all the powers are there for bishops to use to get heavy with the likes of Opus Dei, but they don't use them, okay? So that it's not the way the Catholic Church works. They don't want to make a massive fuss. They don't want a big schism. They don't want a huge public relations disaster. And also they're not like those kind of people. They're not ballbusters. They're not cops. They're mild mannered consensus people. I don't like having to, come down very heavy on groups. It's a horrible thing to do anyway, isn't it? It's not how they operate, but it's how Opus Dei will make you operate. You either give up or you have to be extremely hard against them. And if you're extremely hard, you can still lose. So that's the problem dealing with the cult. And there are other organizations like Opus Dei, other institutions of pontifical rights. So that's where the problems arise in these institutions that don't have safeguarding oversight on the ground because there's no Vatican body that's sending people to England or to any country to monitor these people. There's the nuncio. Okay, well he's not good that doesn't do that. So you've got this ridiculous void where you have to find out a way in which you can appeal from a decision made by a safeguarding procedure within a institution of pontifical right, find a way to Rome. And it's not even advertised. I tried to get a Jesuit to find out where to send an appeal to. He didn't know. He did some inquiries. It's not advertised anywhere. So the appeal is to the dicastery of clergy or some other body in the Vatican. So this is a sign of absolute utter administrative oversight and incompetence and corruption, to be honest, in the Vatican. The Vatican has operated like this for a long time. But at the same time, there are parts of the Vatican that know exactly what all the problems are, but they can't prevail. And I'm going to put it in the description of this video, a link to a document called Sects or New Religious Movements, a Pastoral Challenge. And this is a Vatican document from 1986, published by the Pontifical Committee for Christian Unity, I think. And it describes the dangers of new religious movements. Okay, it doesn't name any of them. It doesn't say that the Catholic Church is immune to them either, but it describes the risks that young people face if they're, you know, feeling unmoored, they're vulnerable, their life is changing fast. New movements springing up seem to be able to attract them easily. So it's identified all the risk factors which one can apply to Opus Dei. And all that information in that report was pulled from bishops and consultation around the world. So there's a huge amount of pastoral wisdom in the Catholic Church to deal with Opus Dei. It's just that the groups like Opus Dei operate in a procedural vacuum, a vacuum that could be plugged by bishops in unusual ways, but hasn't been. And so, um, what happens is the sincere Catholics now can be very unsatisfied with parish life because it seems to be very boring and people seem to be going out of routine, which they are, or out of some sort of vague sense of guilt that something bad will happen to them if they don't go every week. So some sort of insurance policy reason, sort of vague feeling that their chances of eternal salvation will be higher if they put in the time, or they come back, they leave when they're in their teens and they come back when they've got kids or something like that. So it seems hypocritical, related not related to real conversion. One can be judgmental, too much judgmental about these things, of course. But anyway, so sincere young Catholics can be disenchanted with parish life, but look at the Catholic faith and think, well, hang on a second, this Catholic faith is very, 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 very well explained. If people really did believe it, then their lives would be transformed, so it seems. And so there are these outside parish groups, these groups that exist outside parish structures, attract people like me, like other idealistic, vulnerable young people who want to live out their faith more intensely, but we lack the understanding that actually the parish structure is there for a reason, because it links you with people around about you in your environment, and that itself gives accountability, gives normality, gives a rhythm to life that you just can't get from going to a group in the middle of a city where people are coming from all over the place. An intentional communities where people don't live around each other, really quite close to each other, are going to become cultish, and there's so many examples of that. And Opus Dei is one big example of that. So Yeah, so the parish, that's why the parish structure does generally work in terms of safeguarding, um, and why other religious communities that are intentional are less likely to be healthy and more likely to attract vulnerable people. So there needs to be even more focus on safeguarding there. And the problem with safeguarding is that, I mean, the if is that also they only respond, safeguarding is only as good as the complaint that is made to it. If you think about, imagine that the mafia, the mafia sort of more or less runs Sicily, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I understand it. Imagine there was a mafia safeguarding office, okay, and it dealt with complaints about the mafia. I don't know how this works in practice. Well, I imagine that they'll have not much work to do, okay, because let's face it, who's going to complain about the mafia in Sicily? And I hope you're going to get away with it. You don't know what is going to happen. You're going to be too afraid. Most people will be too afraid to complain. So the safeguarding office of the mafia in Sicily could say, "There's no problems here at all with the mafia. Everything works fine. We haven't had any complaints." Okay? So that is how it is with safeguarding in any organization. If you've got an atmosphere of fear and control that prevents complaints in the first place, it can seem like that's a safer organization than a more healthy organization where you can complain with freedom and expect some sort of fair due process. Okay, so that is how it is with Opus Dei. So even if they're, let's say somehow you made it got through a complaint through, you know, so this is why Opus Dei flies under the radar because there are so few complaints because they're so hot. The people at the top of Opus Dei are so hot on controlling and suppressing and linking in and compromising everybody that leaves Opus Dei that it's really difficult to get people to be brave enough to be trauma free enough to come out and say, this is what happened, this is what I did, all the abuse that they caused, they caused. It would be fantastic to have a lot more, a few dozen more top level Opus Dei people in local councils, regional councils in Rome saying, I did this. I made that sort of decision for a number of people that really messed up their lives. I sent them to this country, sent them to that country. These people collapsed. These people left in a mess. And I made decisions which contributed to that. And I know it. I know it's wrong. There's so many people out there who are melted into the night. Okay. And even if they wanted to complain, they would face terrible pressure from Opus Dei. So this is the problem. And this is a problem. So there's a real, there's a real frustration in me and in many other people that we just can't get anywhere with Opus Dei because they're staked out the ground so well. It's utterly evil. There's no Christianity in it whatsoever. It's about control, protection, secrecy, keep things under the radar, everything against every value that Jesus preached. Everything, it's about power. It's about power. It's turned Christianity into a power structure, okay, of the worst type. We've known that throughout the history of church institutions that there's always that tendency to abuse of power. But Opus Dei have taken this to an absolute art form of leveraging their power in any way they can to absolutely nail down every possible avenue of criticism. Okay. And so you only get a few people like me in different countries willing to go public and say, yeah, these guys need to become clean. And these guys also need to be set free from their own structures. They're their own worst enemies. I care about them as well. I care about the little person inside of them who's actually a real person, completely traumatized beyond belief by their ridiculous superego, their Opus Dei superego, that completely eclipses their real personality. These people need major healing, and many of them will spend their whole lives completely with their personalities completely suppressed, really suppressed. Terrible trauma that they have had inflicted on them as kids, and which they continue to inflict on each other all the way through their lives. It's appalling, really. But they seem to operate, seem to be normal people if you speak to them, but their 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 freedom's been absolutely trampled on beyond belief. So anyway, I've lost the plot a bit, but thank you for listening.